Hello, my beautiful friends. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. If we're meeting for the first time, allow me to introduce myself. I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And I offer one-on-one angel sessions, a longer form of support, soul mentoring, and a variety of classes designed to inspire your spirit. What kinds of classes, you might ask? Well, I have an ongoing, beautiful group that meets on Monday mornings. For those of you who have soul-inspired businesses, it is called The Joy in Business. And there's a lovely group of people that gather together and receive encouragement, inspiration, support, and community. So if that's up your alley, feel free to go over to my website, illuminatingsouls.com, and you will find out the next date that the group restarts. I also, appropriately enough, am teaching a podcasting class right now. We are halfway through, but I will likely teach it again later this year, so if that interests you, let me know. And I always have something cooking up, so I invite you to sign up for my mailing list at my website, and you can also follow me on Facebook, where I do my best to post inspiration there on a regular basis. But for now, the angels and I are here to co-create a beautiful, sweet space where you can replenish, restore, where we can keep you company for the next hour or so as you drift off to sleep. Or if you're listening during your waking hours as you go about your day. I know that this was designed as a sleep podcast, but many of you do listen during your wakeful time. So however you choose to listen, thank you. In terms of what you can expect, as I said, this is going to be an hour-long episode, and that is because I am an avid sleep podcast listener. I listen to one every night as I'm drifting off to sleep, and my preference is for the longer episodes because I don't feel pressured to hurry up and go to sleep, but it's not fun. And so that's my choice, is to make these hour-long episodes, and they're not the kinds of episodes that you must be riveted to the whole time. I'm going to be talking to you in this kind of low, slow tone the whole time, so there's not going to be any loud surprises. It's sort of conspiratorial, right? It's like, we're away at summer camp and we're telling each other stories. And we're kind of whispering, but not really whispering, and that's the tone I bring forward here. So the first 15 or 20 minutes, we talk about some spiritual stuff. I bring in the angels, and then we move on to story time. And story time might be stories from my own life. We might flip through the pages of an old community cookbook or a TV guide, or read something that's in the public domain. So each story time is a little bit different. And the thing that all of these episodes have in common is that they're filled with a lot of love for you. And so if you are somebody who is clairsentient, meaning you feel energy, my hope is you'll feel the love that is here, that this love is not only flowing from my heart to yours, but the angels are here, adding their love as well. So I invite you to get comfortable and cozy in whatever way works best for you, and maybe even take a few deep breaths in and out. So as I record this, it is early morning, and I want to say I'm so proud of myself for getting in front of the microphone. it used to be really easy for me to get to the microphone early to record these episodes, but as the world has gotten weirder, how about if I use that word? That's a good word for this. As the world has gotten stranger, I am dawdling a lot more in the morning, but it's an intentional dawdle. I crochet, I listen to an audiobook, and it helps to settle my mind and my nervous system. And it makes it easier for me to embark upon my day. But this morning I knew that before I did that, before my dawdling commenced, I wanted to record this episode for you because my preference is to record these episodes in the early morning when the world is still quiet. Not only because from a podcasting perspective that's helpful, but I love the quiet of the energy that most of the world, well, the city, right, in our time zone, most of our time zone has not woken up yet. It's also raining just a little bit this morning as I greeted my husband as he left for work. He said, "Oh, it's really raining." And I thought, oh, well, I'm sorry you have to drive to work in the rain, but how lovely. I get to record my podcast in this cozy environment. Not that I'm in the rain, I'm inside, but you know how delicious that is when you're inside and you don't have to go anywhere and it's raining outside and it's still a little bit dark out. So I bring you this beautiful, sweet, quiet energy. This week in one of my groups, we had a really profound conversation about quiet. That sometimes when we're learning to meditate or if we're noisy and someone says, be quiet, quiet can seem daunting because we've been taught to equate quiet with emptiness, with disengagement, almost inert, but quiet also is poignant. Quiet has its own language when you learn to listen to it. That it's not empty. It's not even still. I mean, still in a lovely way, but quiet. It has its own language. It has its own rhythm. The quiet can be as full as the night sky with the stars and the moon. And so when I talk about the quiet here right now, that is the quiet that I speak of. It's the quiet where we become present to the trees and to the breeze and to the heartbeat of our own bodies and Mother Earth, where our minds have permission to disengage from the busyness and we simply get to be present in this moment. So again, the goal is not to empty our minds. It is rather to redirect into this quiet. You know, I didn't know I was going to share this, but I feel guided to share with you about the first time I was taught to meditate. I was actually enrolled in a class that I was in to try to get my MBA from Pepperdine University. It was in the mid-'80s. And I have a whole episode about this. It's listed as my first psychic experience. So if you want to hear the whole story, you can go back to that. But this was a class in human development that we all had to take. And the teacher taught it from the perspective of what we would now consider metaphysics. Your thoughts influence your reality. We are much more than we know. All of those good things that I now believe. But I was a skeptic. But the class culminated in a retreat in Santa Barbara. And the first day of the retreat, we were all sitting in a circle, and he was teaching us to meditate, and he taught about it from this perspective of clearing your mind of thought, which I understand, but as somebody with a very busy mind, it's not the easiest thing for me to do. But what he did was he shared with us that when our mind started talking or racing, he said, focus on your hand. Focus on your hand. How does your hand feel? What position is your hand in? And so as we were sitting in an extended period of meditation, which may really have only been about 10 minutes. To me, it felt like hours, but I'm sure it wasn't. He would periodically insert into the quiet, go to your hand. And so that actually opened the door for me to experience the quiet as something other than absolute emptiness and stillness. And so now when I go to the quiet, there is deep presence there. If I sit outside in the morning, and I don't even know that I call it meditation, I think perhaps I would call it beingness. I just am with the morning, and I listen to the birds. I listen to the sound of the traffic blocks away. I listen to the sound of the breeze moving through the leaves of the trees. And so this is the energy I bring to this podcast, even though I'm talking. There might be some laughter. I'm invoking that beautiful sense of quiet so that your beingness can relax, can let go, can receive. See, we're inviting you to receive this divine love that is actually always here. But sometimes we just need to be invited in to the awareness so that we can fully receive and be aware of our receiving of this love. So once again, I invite you to take a nice deep breath in and get comfortable in whatever way works best for you. And I'm going to invite the angels in to be with us. They're already here, but I love sharing this ritual with you. So beautiful angels on high, I invite you to join us here. And I ask that you infuse this broadcast with waves of love, of calming, soothing, healing energies. I ask that you bring to each one of our beloveds listening to this message an experience of ease, of balance, of grace. That they experience lightness of spirit as they remember who they are as a beloved of this universe. So dear ones, just take some more breaths in and out, just allowing your breath to grow deeper and deeper still. Allowing the angels to bring to you this beautiful, soft, sweet light that is filled with love that has been calibrated just for you. That the angels know what is present in your heart and what is happening in your life right now, and they come forward to support you. That you need not do the heavy lifting in this moment. The angels are carrying you. They are lifting you up. They're very gently balancing your light body, knowing that your light body influences your physical body, so they are also bringing balance to your physical body. And so just breathe, allowing this energy to be with you. Sometimes I find it helpful to imagine that the space I am in is filling with a soft pink light. So if that feels like a lovely invitation for you, I invite you to do the same. You can actually change the color of the light if you prefer turquoise, if you prefer lilac. Just imagine this healing light flowing to you, traveling where it is needed. And once you've had your fill, it will remain with you, and it will also expand to everyone, everything you love. You don't even have to call them into your mind. The angels know who is in your heart, and so they are now sending this love to all the places in your heart, all the people, all of the experiences. You can just stay here in your own love bubble as the angels allow this love to continue rippling along the timeline of your life. Known and unknown, seen and unseen. So just breathe, allowing the angels to tend to you. Just breathing this light into your body as the angels bless this moment in time that we are in with blessings for you and blessings for all that is in your heart, blessings for all that is on your timeline. You are a catalyst in this moment through which this love flows. And you need not do any of it. The angels simply read your consciousness and your heart, and they send the light everywhere it is needed. So you just breathe. And again, just come into this beautiful, sweet space that is filled with comfort for you. And if this is your bedtime, I invite you with one of my sweetest invitations that I love to cozy on up and snuggle on in whatever way is best for you. I am a lots of blankets and lots of pillows kind of girl, so that is my form of cozying and snuggling. But you do it your way, whatever works best for you. Maybe you roll yourself up in your blankets like a burrito. Maybe you tuck in all the corners. Maybe you sleep on your stomach. Or maybe you sleep under a blanket of all your dogs and cats, right, as they pile on you. So you just get cozy. And the angels are going to stay with you. They'll continue sending you this love. And we are going to move on into story time. So for story time, as I came back to my office to record, I had a couple of different choices. I do have a really good TV guide that I will do an episode about, I promise, but I just wasn't feeling it this morning. And I think, as I've shared with you before, life is lifing, right? The world, that's all I'll say is, the world. And so I am very connected to the things that comfort me right now, that bring me a sense of warmth and home and community. And all of you who listen know that that gateway for me quite often is food. Now, I hope you are not tired of hearing me talk about food yet, because we are going to go through the pages of an old Jewish community cookbook that I recently purchased on eBay. It is called Precious Jewish Cooking, and this is from the Sisterhood Parkway Jewish Center in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I don't know when it was published, but I looked up what I could on newspapers.com, and I think this may have been published in the 60s. I did look up the names of some of the women who are listed in the directory, and so that was my best assessment. I think this was published somewhere in the 60s. And again, if you're new to this podcast and you don't know what a community cookbook is, I love telling you guys about these, but wherever there were groups of women, a PTA, a sisterhood, a church group. This was pre-internet, yes? So think the decades of the 1900s where women were doing most of the cooking. We didn't know about fast food then and takeout and all of that good stuff. And so women were really taking care of the home. And they would prepare the 3 meals a day. And around this era, if it is the 60s, some women had started working outside of the home. World War II really brought that into our society, where women started working outside of the home more than they had been. So this was an era where they started introducing foods that helped meal preparation move along more gracefully. Canned food, frozen food. They weren't using microwaves. They were not part of our culture at that point. And these books were a compilation of favorite recipes from these groups of women. They were not necessarily curated cookbooks like we might buy today. You know, if you go out and buy Ina Garten's cookbook, all of those recipes have been tested in many different kitchens with different ratios, and by the time that recipe is published, it's pretty much foolproof. This was not that kind of cookbook. These were the kinds of recipes you might write down on a napkin or a piece of paper and give to your neighbor. These might be the recipes you cut out from the back of a women's magazine or gotten off a can of soup. Or this might be the recipe that your grandmother used to cook, bake, fill in the blank of whatever it was. So, for instance, in Jewish cuisine, we have a dish called kugel, which is a casserole of sorts, and there's savory kugel and sweet kugel. I love the sweet kugel, of course I do, which is made with egg noodles, and then the ingredients can shift depending on who's making it. Now I use Greek yogurt instead of sour cream, cottage cheese, a little bit of sugar, eggs, and butter, and raisins, lots of raisins. That's the recipe that I like. Other people put in other kinds of fruit. They might put cornflakes on top. So it's not as if there's a singular recipe for kugel. Every home made it differently. And so you might come into a community cookbook and there might be 10 different kugel recipes that are similar. You don't have the ultimate kugel recipe. It's sort of, this is how Grandma May made it, and this is how Grandma Pearl made it, and everybody has a different recipe. I would suppose if this was a cookbook from the South, there would be a lot of biscuit recipes and cobbler recipes, and because every region, every community has its own food. I actually just ordered a community cookbook of Swedish food. I don't know anything about Swedish food, but I thought it would be interesting to explore that together. So that's a future episode, but we are going to be diving into the world of the food of my people and my heart, which is Jewish cooking. And when I come into these cookbooks, I feel like I am being embraced by the aunts, by the grandmothers, or bubbies, as we would say in Yiddish. Like, I feel like I am being hugged by this community of women who raised us, right? Who were always ready with, do you need something to eat? That's always something in a Jewish household. You want something to eat? Food is love. we are definitely a culture where food is love. So I thought I'd share some of this love with you. Love of these women who served their communities, who created food from love for their people. And I'm sure it is so delicious. So let's go into the pages of precious Jewish cooking from the Sisterhood Parkway Jewish Center in Pittsburgh. And on the dedication page, it says, we dedicate this book in honor of Parkway Jewish Center Sisterhood's 20th year. So that's why I think it's the 60s. When I looked up this center in newspapers.com, it seemed as if all mentions of this place sort of drifted off in the 60s at some point. And I want to share with you this dedication, which is so sweet, and so I invite you to take this into your heart. This book is dedicated to mothers who have the rare ability to take the best of yesterday, combine it with the hope of tomorrow, and convert it into a happy and meaningful today. Oh, that just touches my heart. And I think how many of us, whether we're mothers or not, are seeking to do that in this moment. Yes. So to take the best of the past and the hope for tomorrow or brighter tomorrows and doing our best to have a happy and meaningful present moment. So whoever wrote that, kudos to you. And so this is the list of the officers who were responsible for this recipe book, as well as were serving the center. I like saying their names. I like invoking the blessing of them. And again, this was back in time where women rarely used their own first name. They went by their husband's name. So we have the president, which is Mrs. Erwin Eisenson. Then we also have Mrs. Herbert Wiseman, Mrs. Gerald Fishman, Mrs. Frank Friedel, Mrs. Harold Felser, Mrs. Norman Infeld, Mrs. Howard Friedman. All of them are going by their husband's name. Mrs. Joel Platt, Mrs. Lawrence Klein, and Mrs. Charles Pollock. The cookbook committee is Mrs. Elliot Greenman, Mrs. Erwin Eisenson, Mrs. Calvin Spector, and Mrs. Moshe Weingarten. And the cover was designed by Mrs. Jack Silverstein. I also have to give a shout out to the women who would volunteer for these things. My parents would volunteer at our temple. My father at some point was the president of the Brotherhood, and he served on the Brotherhood committee, and my mom was involved in Sisterhood, and it takes a special caliber of person to serve on these committees. It can be a pretty thankless job, but they keep these things going. So I just want to honor these women and the contribution they made to their community, to their families, and we are even reaping the benefits of this all of these years later, which is super cool if you ask me. Okay, the first section is all about pickles. Now, I know pickles are having their moment. I'm not a huge pickle aficionado, except for new pickles, which are pickles that basically have just spent a moment in time in the brine and then they're taken out. Alas, I have no access to new pickles here where I live, or seemingly in the San Francisco Bay Area. So next time I go to LA, or if I'm back in the Skokie area, I will be partaking of a new pickle. There are places that will deliver them, by UPS or something, like on Gold Belly, but I cannot bring myself to spend that much money on the amount of pickles I would need to buy in order to satiate my desire, because I don't want a gallon of new pickles. I just want one. So that's my little editorial on the world of pickles. I'm not going to read any recipes. We are going to move on to the next section because I love its title. Hors d'oeuvres, party, and TV snacks. Like you had me at TV snacks. because I'm a child of the 60s and the 70s, and eating in front of the television was its own thing. I know we do this all the time now, but I grew up in the era of TV dinners with TV trays. Like, there was a specificity to eating in front of the television. And each of the little sections has a little prose. And this one says, if nature did not give you that which is yours by right, just nibble at these dainties to give you an appetite. I have no idea what that means, but we have invoked it. Here we go. All right, cheese ball. Like, who doesn't like a good cheese ball? I mean, this does not sound good to me. That's a sort of, I don't know, I suppose a lot of people don't like a good cheese ball, but, that seemed like the thing to say. So it involves a half a pound of sharp cheddar cheese. I'm not a big cheddar fan. 2 packages of cream cheese. And back then, cream cheese existed only in a block that was wrapped in sort of this foil thing from Philadelphia. A 1/4 pound of blue cheese. So this is going to be very savory. 1 tablespoon of grated onion and 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. And half a cup of chopped nuts and half a cup of minced parsley. Okay, so I have a question. Can you taste this already? Like, this flavor profile is already present for me, but I'm not going to make it. Oh, this is from, they say the name. This is from Eileen Cohen. So here they get to use the woman's full name and not her married name. Okay, this is an interesting recipe that you might not know what this is. It's mock stuffed kishka. So kishka is definitely a Jewish food. It is kind of a cousin to a sausage, but not any kind of sausage you've ever had before. It involves like a lot of matzah, which is a form of breadcrumbs, and it's savory, and it has onions, and it is really delicious. I crave it every once in a while. So you'll kind of get the flavor profile from the ingredients here. So you're going to take 1 small onion, 2 stalks of celery, 1 box of tam crackers, which are matzah crackers, 2 carrots, and 1 stick of margarine melted and seasoning to taste. Now, quite often in Jewish cooking, you'll see them using margarine instead of butter, because in a kosher household, you don't mix dairy and meat. So if you were going to serve this with meat, you would use margarine. So what we do is we place all the ingredients in a blender, roll it in foil, refrigerate overnight, and bake 1 hour at 350 degrees. And this is from Mina Mandel. The challenging thing about these episodes is I start craving these foods. Like, now I need kishka and I need a new pickle. So here's one that's interesting. Guacamole. So how would a housewife of the 60s in Pittsburgh made guacamole? Well, it looks good. 2 ripe avocados cubed, 1 onion chopped, a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of Tabasco, and 2 medium tomatoes. And we're putting it all in the blender. And it's like, as you know, with guacamole, you need to eat it right away, right? And this is from Ruth Spector. I will tell you, I am presently having a guacamole addiction courtesy of Chipotle. I love me some Chipotle. It's so interesting. I did not eat it for like 5 years. And I don't know what happened. At some point, I must have been hungry and I stopped at a Chipotle, and now I'm all in. But I get 1 taco. For those of you who may not eat large meals, it is an immense bargain. You get 1 taco and they fill it with everything. It's a whole meal. So I'm a 1 taco person, and when I'm feeling particularly adventurous, I get guacamole. I don't know why you needed to know. Well, you didn't need to know that, but Again, this is like friend time, right? Like, we're out at lunch and we happen to talk about Chipotle, and I tell you about my favorite Chipotle order. What do you get from Chipotle? You know, as I flip through these recipes, this is a very thin section, and I'm kind of disappointed because I am seeing no TV snacks. There are at least 2 herring recipes, which I don't know who wants to eat that in front of the television, but definitely no child ever born in the 19th century would be like, woohoo, I get to have herring as I watch Bozo Circus. There is a pineapple cheese nut ball and egg rolls, but they are kosherific egg rolls. I'm sure they have nothing to do with Asian food. Okay, I must say disappointed. I would want to see some Chex Mix in here, like some version of Chex Mix. I would want to see some version of like a Rice Krispie treat or something that would be television worthy, but nothing here sparks my interest. So we'll move on. Okay, I skipped ahead a little bit. So we are now at beverages and sandwiches, and I will tell you just in a moment why I had to stop here. Because of the fruit punch recipe. If you are of my generation, you are immediately going to have a flashback as I describe it to you. 4 cans of high C fruit punch. Do you guys remember? Can you see the can right now? They were these big high C cans. High C would be like Hawaiian punch or Kool-Aid, but they would come in these big tin cans. And you would have to have a can opener, and you would take the pointy part of the can opener and you would punch a hole in one side and then the other side, because you would need 2 holes in the top so that the air could flow through and the beverage would come out. And high C or Hawaiian punch, those would be the drinks of childhood. So whenever it was somebody's birthday and the mom brought in cupcakes, there would always be cans of high C, and they are calling for the fruit punch flavor, which was really the only one that counted, right? So we're going to have 4 cans of high C fruit punch. We are going to have 3 bottles of ginger ale. Of course we are. What do you think comes next? I know you know this. If you can't think of it, once I tell you, you're going to go, of course. A quart of sherbet. Now, you could either do the orange sherbet or, of course, the one that was the best is the rainbow sherbet, right? And then you're going to have strawberries or chunks of pineapple. This is quintessential childhood. We're going to get a little fancy schmancy here. So take 1 can of punch and pour it into a mold. So we're going to make like a Hawaiian punch sherbet ice mold. So we have like a little ice flow on top of our punch. So we're going to freeze it solid. And then a half an hour before serving, unmold the punch block and put it in the punch bowl. Add 1 can of punch and 1 bottle of ginger ale to fill the bowl. Add sherbet all at once or in small amounts. Then garnish with strawberries or pineapple. The above recipe was given to Eileen Cohen several years ago by the late Ruth Rotman. So, I mean, we've all had this, yes, 1,000 times. Okay, here's another childhood flavor profile, Tutti Frutti Punch. So now we're going to start with 2 packages of raspberry Kool-Aid. Again, can you just taste the powder of the Kool-Aid? 1 can of frozen orange juice, back when orange juice came in the concentrated cans, yes. 1 pint of unsweetened pineapple juice, 1 pint unsweetened grape juice, 2 quarts of water, 2/3 of a cup of sugar. This is going to get sweet. 1 cup of crushed pineapple, which is optional, and 1 bottle of chilled ginger ale. So you mix it all together and it makes 18 large or 36 small drinks. And this is from Teresa Schwartz. Okay, we are coming into the baked goods section, and there's several recipes for challah. So again, every family had their own challah recipe. My mom tended not to make challah. She was more about the quick breads and stuff. There is a mandel bread recipe, and if you don't know what mandel bread is, it is the Jewish version of biscotti. I love mandel bread. This one calls for 3 eggs, 1 cup of sugar, half a cup of orange juice, so that's interesting, 3 teaspoons of baking powder, half a teaspoon of vanilla, 3 cups of flour, half a cup of oil, and then half a cup to 1 cup of candied fruits and or nuts. In our home, it was always pecans. So that was the Phyllis Bleadon method. So you blend everything together. You may need a little more flour until you can form it into a loaf. It'll make 3 loaves. And then you bake it at 350 degrees for 45 minutes to an hour in greased pans. For toasting, similar to Zwieback, you slice it when warm and place the slices on their side to dry. And my mom would always put cinnamon sugar on the slices as she was toasting it. Oh, I have her recipe for mandel bread, and I continue to threaten myself to make it. Not really threaten. I would really love to make it, but if I make it, I want to make it with pecans, and Wes is allergic to them. So I could make them with chocolate chips or something, but I'm not making them because it is safer for me to have mandel bread living in the realm of fantasy than reality. So I'm just happy sharing the recipe with you from this book. So yum. And of course, this being the 60s, there must be the obligatory diet recipe. So we have diabetic banana bread. How would you make that, you ask? Well, let me tell you. We take 1 pound of ripe bananas mashed. That would be 3 or 4. 1.5 packets of granulated sugar substitute. Back then, that was probably Sweet and Low. 2 eggs well beaten. 1 3/4 cups of cake flour. 3 teaspoons of baking powder. And half a teaspoon of salt. Well, there you go. There you have it. I don't know if there's any more diet recipes in this recipe book, but we'll find out together. And then we have German blueberry Kuchen. Now, Kuchen is coffee cake. It's a German word for coffee cake. So it was very common in a Jewish household to have our own recipe for Kuchen, which my grandmother used to make, that my sister now makes. So just think of it as a coffee cake of sorts. We've got a chocolate fudge cake. We've got best chocolate frosting. I love when they name things like this. So let's see what's in the best chocolate frosting. 4 tablespoons of butter, 4 squares of unsweetened chocolate. And this is just an aside for anybody who had a mom that would bake when you were a kid. Was there anything more disappointing than unsweetened chocolate? You know, you'd look in the pantry and there'd be this block of chocolate and I'd be like, whoa, yeah. And then I saw that it was unsweetened. Oh, it was such a disappointment. But it makes good frosting. All right, and 1/3 cup of hot milk, 3 cups of sifted confectioner's sugar, which is where the magic happens, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and 1/8 teaspoon of salt. Okay, and that is from, I'm not going to go through all the instructions. This is from Marlene Silverstein. Thank you. We've also got chocolate marble cake, fruit cake. Again, fruit cake is the kind of thing that for us kids we never ate, but my parents did. Golden raisin cake. I'm a raisin girl. I love raisins. I don't know why you needed to know that. I don't like small raisins. I like big juicy raisins, so I mail order my raisins. But I just found a new source for my raisins at Berkeley Bowl. If you listened to the last episode, I told you about my adventure, and it included a run to Berkeley Bowl, which is a local supermarket, and they sell their own raisins in the bulk section, and they are quite delicious. So perhaps I found a new source for my raisin appetite. Okay, and then we have several cheesecake recipes, and I love cheesecake. I rarely eat it. My mom's cheesecake that she used to make was a fluffy cheesecake rather than the denser cheesecake that you get at Cheesecake Factory. My mom's cheesecake was very light, and then it was covered by canned cherries on the top and was quite delicious with a graham cracker crust, of course. I think they might have, let's see, no, I don't know that they have one of those recipes here. But it does involve cream cheese and sugar and eggs and vanilla and sour cream and graham cracker crust and eggs. I mean, come on, what's bad about that? That's so good, right? There's a banana split cake, a cherry cake. It's made with cherry pie filling. Okay, well, that could be quite delightful. Okay, this is a great title. I've never heard of it before, but it might be something that is regional. Maybe if you're from Pittsburgh, you've heard about this before. 3-puddle cockeyed cake. Is that not a great title? 3-puddle cockeyed cake. Okay, so let's see what goes in it and see if we can figure this out. 1.5 cups of sifted flour, 3 tablespoons of cocoa, 1 teaspoon of soda, which is baking soda, 1 cup of sugar, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 5 tablespoons of cooking oil, 1 tablespoon of vinegar, 1 tablespoon of vanilla, and 1 cup of cold water. So sift the flour once, put the flour back in sifter and add the cocoa, soda, salt, and sugar. Sift right into a greased 9 by 9 by 2 inch pan. Make 3 puddles in the dry mixture, which must be a little well. 3 puddles in the dry mixture. Into one, pour the oil, into another the vinegar, and into the third pour the vanilla. Pour water over the top and mix with a spoon until nearly smooth and you can't see the flour. Bake at 350 degrees for about 30 minutes. Don't overbeat! Exclamation point. Very important. Serve plain or with ice cream on top. By Sima Levine. I can't quite figure out what that's going to taste like, but I love the title. That's brilliant. Oh, there's a chocolate pistachio cake. I love pistachios. 1 box of yellow cake mix. So we're going easy peasy. We're just going to use the boxed stuff. I honor that choice. So 1 box of yellow cake mix, 1 box of pistachio instant pudding, 1/2 cup of oil, 1/2 cup of water, 1/2 cup of orange juice. Now that's interesting. 1 small can, 3/4 cup chocolate syrup. I just had a flavor flashback. We always had some Hershey syrup in the house, and it used to come in the can. I totally forgot that until just now. Now it's in the plastic bottle, but it used to come in a can. Okay, so we're going to mix all the ingredients together except the chocolate syrup. So we're going to beat everything for 2 minutes. Remove 1 cup of the batter and mix that with the chocolate syrup, and then pour the batter in a well-greased and floured bundt pan, because everything is more delicious in a bundt pan. Pour chocolate mixture over the top and do not mix or marble. Just pour over the top of the batter. Bake at 350 degrees for 55 minutes. Rest for 25 minutes before turning out of pan. Well, I bet that could be good, huh? Then there's also a cherry coffee cake. And we come to the candies and cookies section, and we have a little piece of prose here. A house should have a cookie jar for when it is 3:30, and children hurry home from school as hungry as can be. There's nothing quite so splendid as spicy, fluffy ginger cakes and sweet milk in a cup. A house should have a mother waiting with a hug, no matter what a boy brings home, a puppy or a bug. For children only loiter when the bell rings to dismiss, if no one's home to greet them with a cookie and a kiss. Well, okay. That's sweet, though, huh? I don't know why a girl doesn't get to bring home a puppy. I would have loved to do that. Okay, let's see what they got. Well, this is interesting. They have poor man cookies. Again, that may have been a regional thing to Pittsburgh. Also, a lot of these women would have kind of lived through the Depression and World War II, so cooking and baking with economy of ingredients would have been important to them. So for the poor boy cookies, we have 1 cup of raisins. We were just talking about those. 1 cup of water, half a cup of melted vegetable shortening, 1 cup of sugar, 1 teaspoon baking soda, and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 egg, 2 cups of flour, and half a teaspoon of salt. So we're going to first boil the raisins and water down to half of water, and that rehydrates the raisins and make them very plump. And then mix the rest of ingredients by hand, drop by teaspoons onto an ungreased cookie sheet, bake at 375 degrees, 10 to 15 minutes. And this is from Ray Weiner, R-A-E, Ray. They have the 7-layer cookies. Do we all not just love those things? Can you just feel the sugar moving through your system at the thought of them? I know you know it's in them, but let's talk about them. So we're going to start off by melting 1 stick of oleo, which was also margarine at the time, in an 8 by 12 inch Pyrex dish in a 350 degree oven. Remove and add, in order, because this is layered bars, 1 cup of graham cracker crumbs, 1 cup of shredded coconut, 1 6-ounce package of butterscotch chips, 1 6-ounce package of chocolate chips, 1 can of Eagle brand condensed milk, and 1 cup of chopped nuts, which of course had to be pecans or walnuts. Bake at a 350 degrees for 35 minutes. Cool and cut makes 3 dozen. And this is from Mimi Klein. I can taste it already. It's interesting that they talk about oleo, which was margarine. I don't quite remember the full story, but growing up, the dairy lobby, I guess, the dairy industry, was very much against margarine. Of course, because they wanted us eating butter. There was this perception that margarine was better for you, though. It had, I don't know who knew. I don't even know if we were talking about cholesterol back then, but it had less bad fats for you than butter did. But also in a Jewish kitchen, things that you might previously have cooked with butter, you could cook with margarine, and then that could still be eaten with something that had meat if you were keeping a kosher kitchen. All right, there is a recipe for rugula here. Now rugula, I say rugula. If somebody speaks Hebrew or Yiddish, they'll call it rugulach, because there's a ch at the end, which I typically will not say. Rugula is like these little pastry cookies. So it usually has a flaky but pretty hefty dough, and then you roll the ingredients into it. Chocolate chips, of course. It could be nuts. It could be apricots. For those of you in the Los Angeles area, I will tell you the best rugula I've ever had comes from Cantor's on Fairfax. The chocolate chip. It must weigh 1/4 pound. Like, they're huge. And they're the perfect bite. They're like crunchy, and they're soft, and they're chocolatey, and I'm sure each one is 1,500 calories. But it's the wonderful thing about memories, is I can just go back and remember it. I don't actually have to eat one, which I will never do again, but I'll read you the recipe. This is not Cantor's recipe. I don't want to get you excited. I don't want to overpromise here. We first have to make the pastry. 4 cups of flour, half a teaspoon of salt, 3 egg yolks, 1 cup butter or margarine, half a cup of sour cream. See, so it's like it's a yummy crust. And then we've got, the pastry, 1 teaspoon of vanilla and 1 package of dry yeast. So we sift the flour and salt together, cut in shortening until pastry is the size of small peas, blend together egg yolks, blend together egg yolks, sour cream, vanilla, and yeast. Mix well. Add sour cream, mixture to flour and butter. Stir to combine. Divide the dough into 6 parts and roll each part into a circle about 1/8 of an inch thick. Cut circle into about 8 wedges. Place a small amount of your favorite filling at a wide end and roll towards center, almost like how you would roll a croissant, and shape into crescents. Did I not just say that? And bake at 350 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes. Suggested fillings. Ready prepared prune. No, thank you. Not going to waste the calories on a prune, arugula, or other jar fillings. Apricot, butter, a mixture of cinnamon and sugar, nuts, and raisins. This is from Estelle Katz. I will also just a quick arugula aside. One of the Jewish deli bagel places in Skokie, I seem to recall, had a sugar-free arugula, which still was a high-calorie food, but I could have it because I don't eat sugar. It was either Kaufman's, I think it was Kaufman's, or New York Bagels and Bialys. And I will tell you, I have been thinking about those because, the world is worlding, and I was like, I could really use some sugar-free arugula along with my kishki and my new pickle. Kaufman's, get your act together and start shipping stuff, because I would place an order, please. Kaufman's Delicatessen in Skokie. I would buy from you if you shipped. I even thought about hiring a TaskRabbit to go and place an order and ship it to me, but that's kind of obsessive. Like, we all know already I'm obsessive, right? At what point is it too much? And I started thinking hiring a TaskRabbit to go food shopping for me in Skokie to buy me stuff and ship to me, maybe tipping me over the edge of obsession. And oh, by the way, remember, I have Ozempic brain, so I want to buy the food and secure the food and get the food in my house, and then I do not eat it. So the last thing I need to do is to spend $100 or so, because I can't imagine it would be cheap, to have somebody shop for food for me in Skokie, ship it to me, and then it sits on my counter until I freeze it. So, welcome to my brain. Weird place to live. But also phenomenal because I get to connect with angels and with you. So, we're all a little quirky in our own ways, aren't we? Which just feels like a beautiful way to complete this episode. I don't want to say goodbye. We have lots more to talk about. We are not even halfway through this recipe book, so we can easily return to it again. And thank you for letting me share my indulgence with you of these recipe books. They bring me into the heart of the kitchen, right? They bring me into the heart of love. I can smell it, walking into a warm house that is filled with beautiful scents of foods, a meal that has been created with love, where the family's gathering together. It warms my heart and it really comforts me, and I am really hoping that some of this energetic comfort, this familiarity, this sense of love, mishpucha, which is a Yiddish word for family, like this mishpucha sense of love and community and warmth, comes through when I share these community cookbooks with you, because that's really why I do it, because it warms my heart. It takes me back to a place and a time where I was surrounded with a lot of love and women who poured their heart into their creations with a lot of love. And it also connects me with the ancestors and, my grandmother and my great-grandmother, who I never knew, and going back in the generations, how everybody had their own recipe for challah or kugel or kreplach, or insert your cuisine of your people. If you're Italian, if you're Greek, if you're from the South, like, we all grew up with our own kinds of food. So food is love in many ways. it also connects me with the generations of women who tended to us. So I'm so grateful for all of the women who brought their heart and soul into their kitchens and into these recipes, that we could just time travel back into it right now with them. So my beautiful friend, I send you so much love. I'm so grateful for you. I wish you the sweetest of dreams, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon. Thank you, and I love you.